Welcome to my channel Brain Decoded. Today I'm going to teach you a short, science-driven neural reset that reliably turns low attention into laser focus in minutes, sometimes in under 60 seconds. This isn't fluff. These are practical, repeatable maneuvers that change the way your brain routes attention by using simple biology, where you look, how you breathe, and a tiny external cue that nudges your chemistry. Use it before a hard task, before a call, or when you need a rapid mental reboot. Fast focus is not magic. It's a predictable shift in neural state that you can create on demand once you understand what actually drives attention. Focus isn't some mysterious talent that a few people are born with. It's a physiological mode your brain drops into when certain chemicals rise, others fall, and sensory circuits quiet down enough for the prefrontal cortex to take the lead. When people say they can't focus, what's usually happening is not a lack of ability, it's that their brain hasn't been given the right cues to enter the attentional state. The remarkable thing is that these cues are simple, controllable, and they work quickly. Attention is governed by neuromodulators like norepinephrine, acetylcholine, and dopamine. These chemicals act like volume knobs, telling your brain what to amplify and what to ignore. When you're scattered, those systems are either too low, leaving you drowsy and unfocused, or too high, tipping you into anxiety and fragmentation. The goal is a very particular middle zone, elevated alertness with a calm body. That's the state where your neural circuits fire in tight patterns, your reaction time sharpens, and your mind locks onto one target instead of hopping between 10. You can reach this state through deliberate behaviors that shift your physiology in seconds to minutes. The fastest lever is your eyes. Your visual system is essentially an extension of your brain, and where your gaze goes, your attention follows. When your eyes are darting, scanning, or constantly shifting between windows and notifications, your brain interprets that as a cue to stay in a broad, unfocused mode. But if you direct your gaze to a single point and hold it there with a relaxed face, the brain begins to narrow its attentional aperture. It's like adjusting a camera lens from wide angle to zoom. A steady gaze quiets background noise and tells your neural circuits, this is the target. Breathing is another tool for rapid state change. Fast, shallow breathing ramps up the sympathetic nervous system, pushing you towards stress and distractibility. Slow, deliberate breathing, especially with longer exhales, activates the vagus nerve, lowering bodily agitation. When the body calms, the mind gains precision. Just one or two controlled breaths can move you out of a fragmented state and into one where thought becomes more linear and tasks feel more manageable. Breath is the bridge between your emotional state and your cognitive performance. There's also the power of stressors like a brief cold exposure or even a quick step outdoors. These small stimuli trigger a controlled release of alertness chemicals, giving the brain a clean jolt without the jitteriness of caffeine. They wake up the system and create a window of heightened readiness. When paired with steady gaze and controlled breathing, they produce an immediate shift into deeper focus. None of this is abstract theory. Your brain is constantly listening to your behaviors for signals about how it should operate. When you combine the right signals, visual stillness, calm breathing, a brief alerting stimulus, you create the conditions for rapid, high-quality focus. It's not magic, it's biology working exactly as it's designed. And once you learn to control these levers, you gain the ability to switch into a focused state whenever you choose. 3 simple levers reset attention quickly: your eyes, your breath, and a brief alerting stimulus. Each one affects the brain through a different pathway, but together they create a rapid shift from a scattered, noisy state to one of sharp, deliberate focus. These levers work because the brain is constantly adjusting itself based on the sensory cues you give it. When the cues are chaotic, rapid eye movements, shallow breathing, constant background stimulation, the brain stays in an unfocused, open mode. But when the cues are controlled and deliberate, the brain shifts into a narrow, high-gain mode built for clarity and sustained effort. The first lever is visual control. Your visual system is not just a passive camera. It's one of the main systems your brain uses to decide how alert or relaxed you should be. When your eyes move rapidly or scan the environment, the brain interprets that as a signal to stay broadly vigilant. That state is terrible for focus. It spreads your attention across too many inputs and makes it difficult to lock onto one task. But when you fix your gaze on a single point, softly, without strain, you send the opposite message. The brain narrows its focus, neural firing becomes more precise, the noise floor drops, and the circuits involved in planning, analyzing, and decision-making increase their output. Even 10 to 15 seconds of stable gaze is enough to begin shifting your attentional state because the brain follows the body's cues instantly. The second lever is breathing, specifically slow, deliberate breaths that stabilize the nervous system. The pattern and depth of your breath directly influence your heart rate, which then feeds back to the brain and shifts your level of arousal. Short, fast breathing speeds the system up and pushes you toward stress. Slow inhales and longer exhales engage pathways that calm the body, making your internal environment quieter. When the body's signals slow down, the brain can allocate more resources to cognitive tasks instead of managing internal noise. Just one deep inhale followed by a slow, extended exhale can reduce physiological tension enough to improve cognitive control. Breathing isn't just relaxation, it's a way to tune the brain's operating mode. The third lever is a quick, controlled, alerting stimulus, something like a splash of cool water on your face, a brisk step into sunlight, or holding something cold for a few seconds. These micro-stressors activate the body's alertness systems and release a burst of norepinephrine, which increases your capacity to focus. The key is that the stimulus is brief. You're not shocking or overwhelming the system, you're giving it a clean, upward nudge that raises attention without inducing anxiety. This creates a perfect window, the body becomes alert, the mind becomes ready, and your focus becomes easier to direct. When you combine these three levers, steady gaze, deliberate breathing, and a short alerting cue, you create a rapid neural reset. It's not complicated, and it doesn't require motivation or willpower. You're simply leveraging the body's built-in control systems to shift the brain into a coherent, task-ready state. Use them consistently, and you'll notice how quickly your mind can transition from scattered to laser-focused. Calm, precise focus is not about pushing harder or trying to will your mind into submission. It is about creating the exact neurochemical and physiological conditions that allow attention to be both sharp and sustainable. When people think of focus, they often imagine frantic energy, hyperarousal, or the kind of forced concentration that leaves you exhausted. True high-quality focus looks very different. It's alert but relaxed, responsive but not reactive, and capable of maintaining clarity for extended periods without fatigue. Achieving this state requires understanding that your brain balances two competing systems: the arousal circuits that heighten alertness and the regulatory circuits that maintain calm and inhibit distraction. Your eyes play a critical role in this balance. Where your gaze goes, your attention follows. Rapid, jittery scanning, constant checking of phones or notifications, or moving between tasks keeps the brain in a diffuse mode, signaling that it should remain broadly vigilant rather than concentrated. To cultivate calm focus, you need to stabilize your gaze. Fix your eyes on a single target. This could be a point on a screen, a distant object, or even your own hands. Hold the gaze softly, without strain. This sends a message to the brain that it can narrow attention and quiet unnecessary sensory processing. Neural circuits that govern planning, problem solving, and decision-making begin to engage in a more synchronized, coherent pattern. Even brief practice of this visual stabilization creates measurable shifts in attentional precision. Breathing is the second major lever. The pattern of your breath has a direct influence on the nervous system, particularly the balance between the sympathetic, arousal, related circuits and the parasympathetic, calming circuits. Fast, shallow breathing tends to elevate stress hormones and pushes the brain toward a reactive state. In contrast, slow, deliberate inhalations with slightly longer exhales activate the vagus nerve, which dampens unnecessary neural chatter and stabilizes heart rate. This alone is enough to move your brain from scattered, anxious attention into a calm, centered mode. One or two controlled breaths can quiet internal noise, making it easier to sustain cognitive effort and decision. making. Finally, a brief, controlled stimulus can fine-tune alertness. This could be a quick exposure to cold, a short walk in bright light, or even a gentle tactile cue. The purpose isn't to startle or shock, but to provide a mild arousal boost that complements the calm state created by gaze and breathing. This combination produces an optimal zone. Your brain is alert enough to respond rapidly, but not so aroused that it becomes fragmented or anxious. Calm, precise focus is trainable. It's not magic, motivation, or brute force. It's the predictable outcome of guiding sensory input, controlling physiology, and subtly influencing neuromodulators. Over time, these practices strengthen neural pathways that make entering this state faster, more reliable, and more resilient against distractions. Once mastered, you gain the ability to switch into a focused state almost at will, giving your cognitive performance a stability and efficiency that far exceeds random bursts of effort. Practice makes the reset faster because the brain is fundamentally a learning organ, constantly shaping itself based on experience and repeated patterns of behavior. Every time you perform a neural reset, stabilizing your gaze, controlling your breath, and applying a brief alerting stimulus, you are training circuits in the brain responsible for attention, arousal regulation, and sensory integration. The first few times, the shift may feel deliberate and slow, but with repetition, these circuits become more efficient, allowing the same physiological and chemical changes to occur faster and more reliably. This is the essence of neuroplasticity. The brain strengthens connections that are repeatedly used and prunes or ignores signals that are irrelevant. At a physiological level, repeated resets enhance the coordination between the prefrontal cortex, which governs planning and executive function, and subcortical structures like the locus coeruleus and basal forebrain, which regulate alertness through norepinephrine and acetylcholine release. Initially, these systems may not synchronize quickly, your attention may wander, or your body may not respond as cleanly to the reset cues. With consistent practice, the brain learns to anticipate the sequence. The simple act of positioning your gaze, taking deliberate breaths, or applying a micro-stressor triggers a cascade of neurochemical changes more rapidly because the circuits have been trained to respond in a predictable pattern. Essentially, your brain learns to switch gears more efficiently. Consistency matters more than duration. Even brief, daily practice sessions of 30 to 60 seconds can produce noticeable improvements. Each repetition reinforces the mapping between the external cues eyes, breath, stimulus, and the internal state of focus. Over time, fewer cues are needed, and the same neural state can be accessed almost instantly. In other words, what initially takes a full minute to achieve might eventually be accomplished in 20 or 30 seconds. The reset becomes more automatic, less reliant on conscious effort, and more resistant to interference from stress, fatigue, or environmental distractions. Another element that improves with practice is the precision of your attention. Early attempts may shift your state partially. Perhaps your mind is more alert, but not fully centered on the task at hand. Repeated execution strengthens the brain's signal-to-noise ratio, allowing irrelevant stimuli to be filtered out more effectively and relevant information to be processed more efficiently. The nervous system becomes tuned to recognize when a reset is needed, and your body responds almost reflexively to initiate it. Finally, the psychological component reinforces physiological changes. Each successful reset builds confidence in your ability to control your mental state. You begin to notice subtle signs of distraction or fatigue and can preemptively engage the reset. This feedback loop of practice, success, and recognition accelerates mastery. The reset becomes less of a deliberate intervention and more of an ingrained skill, a short, reliable sequence that your brain knows will reliably produce calm, precise, and high-gain focus. In this way, repeated practice transforms a simple behavioral protocol into a powerful, automatic tool for controlling attention and mental clarity. This neural reset is simple, portable, and repeatable. It's not a replacement for sleep, exercise, or long-term habit work. It's a tool for rapid state control. Use it before the work that matters. Use it when you need to show up clean, clear, and decisive. Your attention is not a fixed resource, it's an engine you can learn to start on demand. If this helped, try it now on camera, put the timer on for 1 minute and run one full reset. Report back in the comments what changed. Short, consistent practice is how you turn a useful trick into a lifelong skill. Thank you for watching Brain Decoded. If you want scripts like this, practical neuroscience explained, and usable tools for performance, hit subscribe. See you in the next video and go get that work done.